Just important, just Yismor David, Adonai Roi Loechsar, Minos Deshi Arbitseini, Almemenu Chosin Aleni, Nafshi Shovi Gadcheni, Madli says Gaman Shemo, Gamki Elech Begate Salmovis Lo Irora, Kiata Imodi, Shiftecha Mishantecha, Hema Yinachamuni, Tarok Lefon Shulchan Neged Sororoi, Tishanta Bashem and Roshi, Kosi Levaya, Ach Tova Chesed Yudefuni, Kol Yemechayai, Shabti Bereis Adonai Liorich Yomi. This week's Sedra is Maseh. Speaks about the 42 journeys that the Jewish people made from the time they left Mitzrayim until they entered Eretz Yisrael. The various reasons given why the Torah lists these journeys. Amongst them, the Rambam says to tell us the tremendous kindness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for us and the tremendous miracles, that we shouldn't think that the Jewish people were on the edge of the desert near civilization, but these 42 journeys showed that they were in the deepest part of the desert without water, without food, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu provided for them for 40 years in the desert. The Sforno says the opposite way. It shows the greatness of the Jewish people. Lech teich acharai bamidbar, that we were willing to go into such a deep desert and follow the Rabbanu Shalom and rely on his kindnesses and rely on his miracles. The Baal Shem Tov says that these 42 journeys hint to the journeys that a human being makes also from the time that he comes into this world and leaves his mother's womb until he enters the promised land, Eretz HaChaim, of the world to come. Everyone goes through 42 similar journeys. And the basic idea is that these journeys in life are a sign that this is the framework with which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a person in this world tremendous kindness, tremendous miracles all along the way. And a person has the free choice to make the best of these journeys, the best of this framework, or Rahman al-Islam, the opposite. Rav Weberman, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, finished his journey in this world in this week's Sedra, where the Torah finishes these journeys and completes the Torah, basically. As a Tosfos, it says that really the Torah completes at the end of Bamidbar. And the Varim is just a review of the Torah. But the real finishing of the Torah is Sefer Bamidbar. And Rabbi Weberman, together with the Torah, finished his journey in this world. He was a Malach Chosid. And he was named in very auspiciously for two malachim. Pinchos became Eliyahu, who's called Malach Habris, and the Aaron HaKohen, Torah says, Sifsei Kohen Yishmru Das, V'Torah Yavakesh Mipihu, Ki Malach Hashem Tzavakosu. So Aaron HaKohen was a Malach, and Pinchos was a Malach, and Rabbi Weberman, who was a Malach or Chachos, was a Malach. What is a Malach? A Malach is a Shliach, is an agent, represents the Mishaleach totally, represents the one who sends him. And he had his mission in life to be a Malach of the Rabbanu Shalom. And his entire life was merely to do what the Rabbanu Shalom wanted him to do and to bring Torah to Miami. You know, it's an interesting thing that people's names have a very significant part in who they are. On the one hand, Pinchos was a kanoi, very zealous, right, not giving in, and very meticulous in everything. Whereas Aaron HaKohen was an Ohev Shalom, and the Rodev Shalom, and Ohev Sabrios, whom Mekarvim the Torah was willing to bend over backwards for the sake of people. So too, Rabbi Weberman was someone who was a Pinchos, was a kanoi. He never, when it came to things between man and God, never compromised, and always represented the emes, what's really true, without any compromises, without any trying to make nice to people in compromising on his principles. And yet when it came to Bein Adam Lechavero, when it came to his relationships with other people, he was an Aaron HaKohen, an Ohev Shalom. In fact, his shul's name was Ohev Shalom. And he was a Rodev Shalom. And then Ohev Esha Brios, Mekarvim the Torah. My relationship with him goes back over 60 years. In the early 1960s, I was in high school, in the Mesivta High School in Miami Beach, in Normandy Isle. And at that point, his shul was in a storefront on Normandy Drive, about a block away. And myself and my Chaverim, Ephraim Silverman specifically, had a very close connection with Rabbi Weberman. We looked up to him. He was probably the first chassid that we ever saw in our life. And we were very impressed and inspired by him. We learned with his children, the older children, Ashaya, and I don't remember who the second one was, but they were little kids at the time, and we tutored them. And Rabbi Weberman used us for witnesses for the gittin that he oversaw, and we had tremendous influence by seeing what a Hasidic Yid bringing up a Hasidic family was. When I came back to Miami years later as the Rav in the Young Israel in North Miami Beach, Rabbi Weberman was the president of the ORC, the Orthodox Rabbinical Council. He was a very prominent rabbinic figure in Miami, and I was a very raw, young Rav starting out in my career, and he taught me a tremendous amount, both in halacha, but more so in how to relate to people and how to relate rabbonis to people. I used to go every year, Eruv Yom Kippur, to his home for kapparas. It was the only place in Miami that you could do kapparas with live chickens. So I remember that very, very well, and I think my little children remember that very well too. He was involved in every aspect of the kehillah. Built an Eruv, a mikveh. He's a tremendous Talmid Chacham, but he's also a pikeach. Not only was he a Talmid Chacham, he knew how to apply his chachma in a very streetwise way. And he involved himself in not only the normal regular areas that a Rav is involved, but he was extremely friendly with the medical examiner in Miami. And because of that, many Jews were saved from unnecessary autopsies and other chilul hameis, because the Goyish medical examiner respected Rabbi Weberman and felt him to be his friend. And he was involved in the police. He was involved in the city council, in politics. So his influence on the Kehillah could be complete. He was a very, very thorough person. And even though he had his specific derech, he was a shliach of the Levaya Rabbi in Miami, but he respected every other derech tremendously, and he helped every single Mossad in Miami. He let the Beis Yaakov, the fledgling Beis Yaakov, meet in his shul for free. But to get its start, he was involved in the Masifta in Torah's Emes. And I remember when I came back to Miami once after I came to Eretz Yisrael. At that point, he had just finished building the new mikveh in Miami, and he was very, very proud of it. And he invited me to take a tour with him of the mikveh. And this was a time when there was a lot of politics going on in Lubavitch, and I was very careful not to mention the issue, thinking that it would upset our relationship. And he told me criticism that he had on his own derech. So he respected every other derech there was, if it was emes, and he even criticized his own derech when it was necessary. I remember him educating his children, home educating them, but each one, lefi darko, each one he raised according to what their characteristics were, their talents, their abilities, their capabilities, and raised them to be fine Shomrei Torah mitzvahs. I learned a lot from him. I was very much inspired by him. I owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude. I'm sure that he will be a Melitz Yosher, as he was when he was alive. And now he'll go Lifnei Kisei HaKavod with all of his Chochmah, with all of his Pinchos, and convince the Malachim and the Rabbanu Shalom that Klal Yisrael need a lot of Rachamim. He'll go before the Kisei HaKavod and be a Melitz Yosher for his family, for Klal Yisrael, for the Miami community especially. And the mishpacha should get that chizuk from the chizuk that we get from the end of this sedra, the chazak, v'nis chazek. The Rabban should give them all a nechama to hein nishmasro tzura b'tzor hachayim until the time will come. She'imocha Hashem dima me'al kol panim b'viyas kol tzedek me'erov yameinu.
Rabbi Gon, Rabbi Yisrael Janowski.
Speaking about Rabbi Hassard, it's not an easy thing. Everything that I have in Miami Beach, I have to have an unbelievable amount of a karz to Rabbi Weberman. There are two aspects of his being that I'd really like to speak about. One is about as a human being, as a yid, and one is as a Rav. When you read Tehillim, you think, wow, David HaMelech is like he's talking about himself. Like, what is it that we're supposed to learn? But sometimes, if you see a pasuk in Tehillim, and you say, I know someone who does exactly that, Rabbi Weberman was never ashamed to be a Jew. One word you could say about him, he was always proud. David HaMelech says, "Va'adabra ve'edaisecha neged malakim v'lei evaish." Wherever he was, he spoke as a Yid. He spoke divrei Torah. He gave you a message from the Rabbi Shalom. That's who he was. Never Avaish. He was always loy Avaish. He was never ashamed. He was always proud, no matter where he was, with the police, with the firemen, with the examiners, with every guy that there was possible, with the mayor, with the governor. He was connected to everyone. Loy Avaish. He was never ashamed. He wore his big day begonim of a Yid. He wore them proudly. His tzitzis were always out. His whole mahus of being a Yid always shined through wherever he was, never being ashamed. As a Rav, Chazal tell us, "V'shinantam levanecha," Umar says in Kedushin, is Yehei divrei Torah shinunim b'ficha. That there always has to be sharp, that you should never be megamgam. And whenever you asked Rabbi Weberman a shaila, he always had the answer. He would quote you Shulchan Aruch sif by sif. Whether it was a Shach, whether it was a Magen Avram, he knew it all. And he was never megamgam. I don't ever remember him thinking, right away, you asked him a shaila, he had the answer. It was a hafladik thing. His knowledge, his yediyas in Shulchan Aruch, in Gemara, Rashi, Taisva, Shulchan Aruch, Magen Avram, Taz, Shach, Sma, you name it, Piskei Tshuvas, he knew it all, whether it was Arba Chalkei Shulchan Aruch, and it was Mamish, V'shinantam levanecha, there was never a gimgum in whatever it is that you had to ask him. The Rambam starts off his Mishnah Torah with the pasuk "Az loy evaish ba'abiti al kol mitzvaysecha." Is when he come up to Shemayim, "Az loy evaish," I won't be ashamed, ba'abiti, because I'll be able to see kol mitzvaysecha. That was who Rav Pinchos Aaron was. When he comes up to Shemayim now, it's loy evaish. That's his whole mahus of constantly being proud. And when he comes up to Shemayim, he will be proud. He will be someone who comes up and says, "Rabbi Shalom, ba'abiti al kol mitzvaysecha." I know every single one of Taryag mitzvahs b'chol protel v'diktu tekeha. That's who Rabbi Weberman was. As Rabbi Left mentioned, the Membei's Masais. So it's very fascinating. There's a few stories. One is when they came to Elam, B'Shem, Shtei Esra Einois Mayim, B'Shimon tomorrow. And then the other story is Misas Arai. I think there's a message over there. The message is that if you come to a midbar, you have to make sure that there's Einois Mayim, and there's food to eat, and there's water to drink. But not just physical food and water, spiritual food and water. And he was taka involved. I was in the Masifta, always helping me, always encouraging me. I was we all came to Miami as raw Rabbanim, right? And we had to make believe that we knew something. But we always had Rabbi Weberman's phone, right? In the old days, he called Ramesha, Ramesha Feinstein, right? He could always call Rabbi Weberman. If you had any shaila, he would give you the answer, right? And this is the way we were able to develop as Rabbanim in Miami, because there was always a Rabbi Weberman there. And then obviously Mises Arain, that's at the end of the Masais. And that Arain, who is Ohev Shalom, Ohev Shalom. So that's the whole package of life, is that you start off, even though you're in the midbar, if you don't find the Mayanais and you don't find the Tamarim, you plant them and you make them. And Rabbi Weberman was sure he was not going to stay in a city where there was no Tamarim and there was no Einais Mayim. And he made sure to encourage that there should be Mayim Lishtais, a Mayim Elatira. He made sure is that everything would develop, whether again, the mikvahs, everything that is a standard in Miami Beach, you can always trace it back to Rabbi Weberman. Just want to, ask Mechila for what, that maybe I didn't visit enough or I didn't do enough. So ask Mechila from the Nifter and Tehei Nishmas Yisrael B'Tzarach Chaim.
Rav Shalom Goldstein.
Avi Rechet Yisrael. It's not possible for me to put in words the person who my grandfather was. I could save you all a lot of time and say it in one sentence. The world lost an Adam Gadol. Zaydi's mind was tremendous, and his shoulders were very broad. Ever since I left his house, I felt a void in my life, and I've been looking to fill that void, and I've, as of yet, been unsuccessful. When people would see me, someone with tzitzis out, a long jacket, payas, and beard, they would ask me, "Who's my Rebbe?" And I would tell them untruthfully, I don't have a Rebbe. But Zaidi, I never told it to you because I was maybe too ashamed. You were my Rebbe. You taught me. You were my Rebbe Muvak. Roiv Chachamasi, I have from you, Zaidi. Those who know me, who interact with me on a daily basis, can attest that almost a single day doesn't pass that I quote you or I say a story about you. Zaidi was Mekayim the Josh of Chazal, as Rav Janowski mentioned previously. Mishinantom, Torah should be Mechudad U'Pificha. He always had the answer within a matter of seconds. He answered, and if you would ask the same question to someone else, they would say, "We'll get back to you, we're looking into it." After a day or two, they'd say the exact same answer Zaidi said. The Torah was so mechuded b'piv that when he would give his Joshua after Kriyas Torah before Musaf, a Joshua in the Parsha was always inspiring, encouraging people. He would put in his ideas in Chasidus as well as Midas Tavos. He told me that he never prepared in advance. He would think of the Joshua as he was walking up the steps to the bima. The Amud. Zaidi was a unique blend of a scholar, a diplomat, and a teacher. He was involved in every aspect of the community. As we heard previously, mikvahs. In his not so long ago, recently, a few years ago, Zaidi was in a very amazing way. He was able to prevent the self-hating Jews from removing the Eruv in Miami Beach. kashrus. He worked as a chaplain for many years, and he had contacts in law enforcement and the medical department, which put him in a position to help many Jews. Sometimes he was able to get people out of jail so they could be home for Shabbos. Sometimes he prevented the desecration of a mace. Many times he arranged police escorts for different Rabbanim coming from different areas who were visiting Miami Beach, which created tremendous Kiddush Hashem. Zaydi's loyalty to Avodas Hashem was ingrained in his bones. Starting from when he first came to Miami, where it wasn't easy to keep the same chumras that he kept in New York. He was makpid on Chal Yisrael, which meant that he himself went to the farm to get milk for him and a number of other families. He would wake up. He had a biological alarm clock. He'd wake up 5:30 every morning. After going to the mikvah, he would learn until Shachris. And when it was time for Shachris, he would go to wake up all the members of his family. And that is, we all remember this. This was 7 o'clock on the dot, banging on the door, shtei tov, shtei tov, shtei tov, lavodas habayre. There was no getting out of it. Zaidi was tremendously makpid to daven with a minyan. He once traveled to I believe it was to Los Angeles, and by car, from Miami to Los Angeles, and he had arranged the trip so that he should be able to stop over for every tefillah to daven in a different place with a minyan. His Daf Yomi Shir continued whether there were people there or not. I've seen that sometimes no one showed up for the Daf Yomi Shir towards in the more recent past. And he just learned to daf by himself. Zaidi was tremendously proud to look like a Yid. There wasn't even, for 1 second, I heard him say that he was uncomfortable dressing the way he dressed. For the Weberman division for the Miami division of the Weberman family, we lost our patriarch, our role model. We learned so much from you, Zaidi. When you were teaching, you were not out to trick anybody. We met somebody on the bus, and they asked us where we're from, Miami. Oh, Weberman. Of course, Weberman. Weberman, he was my Rabbi. Everyone loved him. When he would give tests, as we're doing the test, we would ask him the question. We'd ask him, Rabbi, what's the answer? And he would tell us. I one time asked Eddie about this. He said, well, of course. My goal is that they should learn. If they're asking, I'll tell them. They'll know. He was looking to teach in any way possible. In the early 2000s, about 20 years ago, there was a chalitza that was done in my grandfather's shul. And a chalitza is not a very common thing. So he called up the Mesifta, the high school, and he said to the principal, why don't you bring down the whole school? And this might be the only time they'll witness a chalitza. It's a very educational experience. And without a doubt, there were members of the Mesifta, the high school, that when they came up to Masechtas Yevamos, they remembered that story. And it gave them an excitement to learn the Masechta. Zaidi didn't care to do things that were considered beneath his kavod. One of the most precious things to Zaidi was when he'd prepare for Shabbos, he would do the cooking, all the cooking for Shabbos. He one time told me that he had told Bobby that he's getting married tonight, that he does the cooking for Shabbos. One time, I think I was 11 years old, he came to me and he asked me if I knew how to swim. To tell the truth, no one ever taught me how to swim. So I only found out later, the Gemara says, Yesh Oimrim, that a father's chayav to teach his son how to swim. And although he wasn't actually my father, but he was my father figure. So he said, okay, come, let's go. He put on his swimming trunks and he went in the pool with me. Zaidi would go to shul, sunshine or no sunshine. We walked in tropical storms to shul, 40 minutes. And probably the most memorable of my experience was when we went to shul in the middle of a hurricane. It was unbelievable. We thought this was too much. But he said, come, we're going. We struggled to open the car. Everyone got in, closed the door. We tried. We drove one way. A tree fell down. Another way was completely flooded until we found a road that was passable. And we came to shul. I said, Zaidi, we're not going to get a minyan. There was 4 people in the car. And when we got there was one person, Tzaddik of a Yid. I don't know where he is today, but he was waiting outside. The door was locked. He was waiting outside in the middle of the hurricane. And called a few more people. They came, and we had a minyan. Zaidi loves everyone in the family. He told me a number of times that, everyone knew when we would come, he would greet you with such a warm smile. He would give this feeling that you are the most important person at this time. He told me that although not everyone in the family chose the same path that he chose, but he loves every one of them. What we can do as a family for Zaidi is continue in his way. That is to say, although many of us were not able to call him on a regular basis and be Mekayim in the midst of Kibbut Av, but even after a parent leaves the world, we could continue to give him kavod. The Zohar says, how could a person give kavod for his parents after they leave the world? If a person is a pleasant person and he goes in the proper path, in a way that people will say, look at this person, fortunate are his parents, that is the ultimate kiyum of Kibbut Av. Zaidi himself told me a story when he was 3 years old. His father had yahrzeit for his mother, for Zaidi's grandmother. And he was going to daven for the Amud. But there was another person who had the same day was the yahrzeit for one of his parents. So Zaidi ben Sion gave up the Amud for him. So Zaidi at the time was 3 years old. He said, Tati, what about Bobby? So he said, Bobby will have more nachas if I let the other person daven for the Amud. I'd like to leave off by doing something that I learned from Zaidi. Every Erev Yom Kippur, before Kol Nidre, when he would give a drasha, inspiring people to come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he would end off by saying, I now speak on behalf, and now I'm saying this for Zaidi, I speak on behalf of everyone here and everyone who's listening from far, and even those who are not listening and may not even be aware of this Levaya. But if they would know, they would want to be included in this group. And if anybody would like to exclude themselves, they're welcome to. But on behalf of everyone here, Zaidi, we would like to ask you, Mechila, for anything that we may have offended you or not given you enough cover or disappointed you. And Zaidi, on behalf of you, if you don't agree, you could take it with you and tell everyone. But on behalf of you, Zaidi, I'd like to grant everybody mechila. And I'd like to thank all those who were very helpful. And Zaidi, I had the chance of speaking to you a few days ago. On your birthday, I was able to speak to you. And I really, really appreciated the bracha that you gave me. Thank you. And I want to remind you, Zaidi, of the bracha that you gave me 2 years ago when we had a baby boy. And when you heard the name that we chose, you said that you're looking forward to telling my son by his bar mitzvah all the good traits of his namesake. And we daven, Zaidi, that your bracha should be mekoyim and we should have you back very soon. And you should be able to see us again.
Harav Agon, Harav Val.
I don't want to make things long. Everything that I thought that I would say here has been said, but it has been said especially by people that knew him many years ago, Rabbi Leaf, Rabbi Janowski. I had the zechir when I came to Miami, and I wanted to visit. The Rav told me there's the old Rav of the city, the Pinchos Weberman. But they told me in advance, he gave me a heads up, he's weak, he's not so healthy. I came in, it was right after COVID. His daughter-in-law was Mama Shomer in him with a gewaltige Mesiras Nefesh. He sat by the door. I sat with a chair outside. Was in a wheelchair. A broken body, but the whole neshama, he was shining when he started to speak Divrei Torah. He started to talk about the chashivas of many things that he was in, even that he wasn't involved with guf, but the Rav was involved with nefesh. It was such a thing that I met many Rabbanim in my life, but Rabbi Weberman inspired me with, as Rabbi Leaf reminded, that he was a malach. Being a malach, if people know how it works, being a malach and then become so close to Lubavitcher Rebbe, it's like Tata de Sasre, that it was possible only by Rabbi Pinchos. Being so close with Lubavitch and building a mikveh that it will be held halachically with all the chumas of Satmarov, That was only the power of Rabbi Weberman. He was the only one that could combine all this together. Being Rav, that is shoyl be'etza with Satmarov in Lubavitch Rebbe Bat Halacha, and then when it comes to the Eruv, to have the approval of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, this could be only Rabbi Pinchos Har. To be, as everybody reminded, the Metzias, the Beis Masois. There's a medrash in the weekly parsha. I don't want to it's already I spoke too long probably. For people are waiting. The Heilige Rav Zeichet Tzadik Livracha is waiting. The Neshama. The medrash says, "Eile Masib Bnei Yisrael." Those are the journeys of Bnei Yisrael. Aval HaMasois Shalom Yisraelam, the journeys of the Goyim. Lo Ikri Masois. Why? Because the journeys of Klal Yisrael hem al pi Hashem v'ha'onon al Yisheim. Everything was al pi Hashem mechad gise. Everything. A Heilige Zayda, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says, "Beza'am titzad oretz." When you come into a city, there's three important things that you need to handle with as a Rav. Zevicha, which is the kashrus ha'machalim. Eruvin, ayin, mem mikvois. Beza'am titzad, that was his thing. V'ha'onon al Yisheim, the onon, the shechina, the ahava, to every yid, to every person, with no difference. So why it was important for me to say what I said? Because the people that knew when he was young, this is one thing. But to come and see the Tzibroch and the Yid, that his soul, his neshama, is shouting out his mitzias of ahava. I really want to apologize. I went several times with Zevi to visit, and once the Rav was asleep, I want to ask Mechila, maybe I wasn't very covered enough, because our conversations, or maybe I wasn't mechabed enough to come and visit more in the last times. And I'll finish with a pasuk. Al tivku lemeis. Don't cry for the deceased. Bechu b'choy. You should double your cry. We have the Zechia in Miami Beach. We have a Yid, the same as his father, Shaif Eil, Shaif Nofik, V'loi Achzik Tevus and Afsher Rabbi Yisrael Shlita, that is Hoylech B'Zochav, there is Mesiras Nefesh on a weekly basis to go and check the Eruv with such an another. He walks on the street, nobody even knows that he has a shaykhis rabbanis. If people don't know him from the koilel or from the yeshiva, but nobody knows who he is. He's godless b'toyre, b'ro kare de avur, and b'chu b'choil hoylech b'lei bonim. Rabbi Weberman, you lost bonim. You lost the Miami Beach as a mokum toyre, as a mokum eruvin, with a mikveh tahare, one of the best mikvehs tahare with all the hidurim. This tahara should go with you with the minig Yisrael to learn tahara, Yisrael Tahira, Mikveh Tahira. In your zechus, it's all the Rav's zechus is also Miami Beach Mikveh Tahira. Hashem Yazu Yibila Amovis Lanetzach. You should be zeiche. As Chazal Akdoshim saying, the Gdoil of Mrs. Tzadikim Yoiser Mechorben Beis Hamikdash. We have now, staying in the days of Chorban Beis Hamikdash, in the days of Mrs. Tzadikim, should this Mrs. Tzadikim should be mechaber us. Soon Yokitzu V'Iramu Sheikh Nofa, Bebias Goel Tzedek. It should be a very short kivura. Yokitzu V'Iramu Sheikh Nofa, Bebias Goel Tzedek, Ubila Amovis Lanetzach B'Meherav Yamein Amen.
Rav David Cohen.
A few quick points. I just was thinking about what's been going on. Now, Zayli, my wife mentioned as well that when Bobby was listed a year ago, everybody was broken. What happened was we said, "V'chotchik, we have Zayde." Now that Zayd is gone, we feel that we've lost a kesher. Zayd was a Mullah. Rav Leff pointed out that he was a shliach of the Borei Olam. I want to add a piece. The Torah wants to give edus on the biggest person ever alive, Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah says one word: V'yomas Moshe Eved Hashem. He was an Eved. And I just want to point out a few very quick points and stories that Zayda, just to get out this point, and we can take with us, and everybody can go home and try to emulate the ways of the Zayda, that he was an Eved Hashem, Mamish an Eved Hashem. And my wife mentioned that it's very, very important. Everybody should remember how much Zayda was metapel with Babi. He didn't have zich, he didn't have himself. He had Babi. And that was the first thing in his head in the house, and Klal Yisrael, and his Kehila, and his Einiklach, and his Mishpoche, and it was all under the umbrella of the Borei Olam. Tomid, Temed, is Rosh Tevis, is the shirish of the word Tomid, of always, every day, the consistency is 4-4-4. 4 is the Isis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and that was Zayda. We walked, Shalom spoke about the tropical storms. We walked on Shabbos 40 minutes in the blazing heat, and obviously with the wool tzitzis and the ganze Geschäft, every few seconds he would do like this with his head, everybody remembers, and the sweat would just like fly off. You could fill up a cup of water with the sweat. And it was with a smile, with a geschmack, it was like a person gives a marshal gives to a woman 2 big, huge, heavy bags and says, go shopping now, fill up as much as you'd like. She runs through the shopping, fills up with the heaviest things, runs, sweats with a big, huge smile. What are you smiling? You're schlepping. When you had to take out the garbage this morning, it was with 10 krechten. No, but this was with the bags filled up because she feels, Zayde felt his whole life was Eved of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So says, he told me that he used to go there every morning, Tommy, mikveh every single morning. When he was in New York, he would go, he said there was snow on the floor. He would go and tovel in the yam. It was the polar bears would do that. They were considered crazy, but Zayda did it for the Borei Olam. There's no such thing. Kedusha v'tara, it was done with a tmidus, it was with it every morning. There was no such thing as missing a shachris. There's no such thing as missing a shir. And it was all with a smile. With his smile was unbelievable. And that's what brings simcha, because a person's Eved Hashem, he has simcha. And that's... Be'ez Hashem, we can take with us this idea. Zayda mentioned to me once, he says that he's never drinking before the daven in anything that has a calorie in it, only water. What do you mean by hungry, thirsty, this, that? A lot of times people say to themselves, a person that thinks only I'm an Eved of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, does state in Shulchan Aruch, this is the best thing to do, then this is what I want to do, and it's with a happiness, with the upbeat, it's with the simcha. The Borei Olam Shem Rachmanas Hanos took away from us such a dugma, and we should, when a tzaddik is nifter, his oiris and his koiches are in the world for everybody to grab. And obviously, the mishpocha, everybody can grab, but I'm begging that the mishpocha, everybody in the mishpocha, anybody had a kesher, a shaykhis to the Zayda, I'm sure have first grabs, as they say. Everybody should grab in chaperein as much as everybody in their world, wherever they are, should be an Eved of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Zayda should be for us a minute yosher, and we all ask Mechila. To ask Mechila from Zayda is a bit funny because he's never makpid on anybody. But B'chol Zot, there's a minig, we're all asking a Mechila from Zayda, and Be'ez Hashem should be Menetz Yosher, Bila Amos Lanetzach, Machad Dima Me'al Kol Ponim.
He was a Mayim Gaber in every aspect that there is. From the little angle that I saw, I'll just share with you to enrich a little bit of who he was. Zaidi was a Kaddish Mirechem, Kipshuto. When he was in Babi Yittel's, when she was pregnant, the doctor said that if she gives birth to him, she's not going to make it, more or less. She said, Baruch, and he used to tell over the story about without the name. And he said, Baruch Hashem, that lady didn't listen to the doctor, otherwise I wouldn't be here today. When he was born, his house was a house of Beis Vad Chachamim. The Shalom Zachar of the time when he had a Shalom Zachar, Baruch Ber was in their house. When he was a little kid. He started to learn to read and learn at a young age. He used to say over a story. There was a Kamarna Rebbe said over a whole drasha by a Shal Shudas, and afterwards they said as a joke to him, what did you understand? And he said over the whole entire drasha. When he was 13 till 26, he went through most of Shas and by the Beis Medrash by the Malachim, by Rav Yaakov Shor, and they learned most of Shas from the old day, from the Gemara to the Sugyas to the Poskim. He built himself up. He totally the Torah that he learned. It wasn't everything with him was sweet. Everything he always used to say that it has to be like a honey, like a bee that creates honey. That's how it has to be, and that's how we learned, and that's how we taught. Everybody knew, like Rav Janowski said, and Rav Leff mentioned, how it was Yidua. He filled himself up and worked everything out. And when you have a question, he would work it out on the spot. He was very creative with his Divrei Torah. One time I had a dream that was bothering me, and I told him over the dream, and he came up on the spot with a whole interpretation of it that I was like, wow, how did you, on the spot. And everybody knows that's how he was. He was very creative on the spot and imbued his Torah into the everyday life. Every situation was a new situation, and he applied it, It wasn't just information that he knows giving over or trying to apply it. It was part of him. It was in his blood. I heard a very nice geder, which is matim for Zaidi. How do you know if someone is a gadol b'Torah? Not by how much Torah they went through, how much the Torah went through them. Zaidi, the Torah that he had, every time you'd speak to him, there was a situation, whatever it was, in the world, in personal, in communities, everything he saw was a Gemara. It was Gemara. He would see the world through the Torah. And it was just natural. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent him, like Rav Leff was saying, as a malach, as a shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, went along and built up Torah. Rav Leff mentioned how by Bobby's Levaya, how Miami was a midbar, but that didn't. It was worse than it was from Aaron Cutler that it was worse than Mitzrayim. There's nothing going to grow from over there, but it didn't faze him because HaKadosh Baruch Hu put it there. He definitely for the harder situations to bring out more Torah. Now that gave him a special sipuk when he would find a heter for things. Something he would say just that it's mutters and he's mala the situation and the whole entire, not just each specific shiloh, the whole entire community of South Florida benefited from his application of his being a ben Torah, being a Jew filled with Torah and imbuing and pouring over into the community. Somebody mentioned before about how the Eruv, how in the autopsies, he would help out a lot of people. Some people try to take advantage of it. There was once a lady that she killed her husband and she wanted to yarshin him. So she said that he was Jewish, that way they shouldn't do the autopsy. And they chopped it and they didn't do it. It was also helpful. One time I got pulled over by a cop skateboarding by the post office, and he took me and a friend of mine, and it's like a federal offense type of thing, whatever. And he was on his bike, and he said, "If you want your skateboards, come with me to the police station." It was down the block, and there was a guy there. His name was Rosenstein. It said on there, and he said, I told him my name, and he says, "Oh, Weberman, your father, you're Weberman's grandson. When I was sworn in over here, he was very nice to me, and then he let me go." And there's like countless stories. Rabbi Vixen told me a song recently that when he was speeding, and he told the cop, "I'm going to have a chavrusa with Rabbi Weberman," so they let him go. Yeah, it didn't always work, but they. He was very. He cared him, and there was a problem with the Eruv. They explained the whole story. That he went to the governor in order to get the heter to matter the Eruv. There were some times where he was very proud of his Torah. There was everybody. a few people mentioned before, he would walk around his tzitzis. He used to go on his ATV, a tractoronim, and he would fly down the beach on Erev Shabbos to go check the Eruv. And then, they would give the message, the Eruv is kosher, or whoever would call up. He was very proud of it. It was natural to him. It says how he grew up and all the things that he did. We do the shtita, and when you explain it to the goyim, like what's going on over here, he would tell them, listen, these strings that you're bothered by, they help you, because when they help us from hurricanes, and it says, if you live the Gemara, how he understood the Gemara, that these things help you, and then they accepted it because he really meant it. He had no problem standing up. He told me there was 2 times where his life got threatened for him to back down. One time he was speaking out against homosexuals that were having a talk show, and there was something going on, and he went to speak out against them, and they threatened his life, and he went ahead anyways. He said, Lo Segur Mipnei Ish, the Torah says not to worry. The Din Torah, one time somebody called Bobby and said, if Zaidi keeps going with this sack, you're going to be an almana, your kids will be a Simon. And he said, Lo Segur Mipnei Ish. He didn't just learn the Torah went into him. It was part of him. If it says Lo Segur Mipnei Ish, you don't have nothing to worry about. You have nothing to worry about it. He lived it. There was always, he took a full achrayus for the community. Rabbi Bixen told me that this is about close to 25 years ago when he came to Florida. Still at that point, he said there was a lot of Rabbanim taking care of their shul, but Rav Weberman was the one who totally cared about the community. There was no chilukim. He was very flowing with Torah and Ava. His shul attracted all types of people, and from Gedolei Yisrael to Pshutei Am, he respected everybody the same way because of their neshama. You can't measure the difference between a mitzvah, a big mitzvah and a small mitzvah, a big neshama and a small neshama. If it was Rabbi Yaakov that spent two winters manim, or Shneir Cutler, when Rav Moshe and the Satmar Rav were there, he would be with them. Different Gedolei Yisrael that came, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, different Admorim, he would escort them, and they had a special connection with him because. Let's say Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, he gave as an example, he would speak and everybody would just listen, okay, Kvod Harav, v'chulu. And when he would tell him something, he would say, argue with him, because his Chelik in Torah wasn't exactly the same as someone else's, and they liked it. The Admorim would feel comfortable with him, and whoever it was, he wasn't judgmental. Somebody told me last night, I'm not going to mention her name, but one of our cousins, that their father was a hard nut to crack. And with Zaidi, he had a great relationship. He had a real respect for him. Zaidi had a real respect for every single person. And we felt it. I remember we felt his love. His love was very, very, just like there's a concept of having emunah pshuta, not getting into all that, just a straight connection. Zaidi had a very, very simplicity, but deep love. And it was overflowing. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to go to his house for Shabbos once in a while, and he would stand by the head of the table, and he would tell me over to everyone has to be quiet because Shimi's saying his Dvar Torah. He would tell me over one sentence, and I would feel so good. He told me over the thing, the Dvar Torah. He knew how to he wasn't there for himself. He was there he was so filled up, and he was just there to lift everybody up. I was one time, was learning Ben Azmanim. I was learning in his office, and he had a phone call. And he was sitting there telling this person on the phone, it was Mike Hochstadt. He was sick in the hospital, and he was speaking over, just telling him stories about how, I think it was Macy's started with a guy with a card, and it turned into a business. Just saying Dvarim B'Telem. And he told me afterwards that the Baal Shem Tov says everything has its midah. So Dvarim B'Telem is for Bikur Cholim. He always knew how to make people feel good. When he would give a bracha, for Yomim, he didn't just say things. He gave a bracha before Yomim L'Raim. Anyone that got a bracha from him, the bracha was the Sifran Shel Tzadikim Gemurim. Sifran Shel Tzadikim Gemurim, because that's where you belong. And he said it. He really meant it, and it felt, even if we don't feel like that, but feeling it from him is, well, he makes me feel like that. It picked us up. And he had, as David mentioned, that his loyalty to Bobby was something outstanding. It's something that it shows, it's a simon. When we get to Shemayim, the way they could tell who we are, they say a vart, al tadin estabercha chetagil l'mekoymoi. So you see how he treats with his spouse. The way Zaidi was, even though he was famous, he had covered, whatever you'll say he do, and he had responsibilities, simchas that he wanted to go to, all the reasons in the world which a standard spouse would be mevatel on their loyalty and responsibility to their spouse. I'm sure Bobby would have been happy for him to go. He missed, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say over 100 simchas, maybe more, I don't know. But it didn't make a difference to him. What it was, he was right now, he has a responsibility to Bobby. And he stayed with her just so that they could be together. And that is something which made a big, which we see the way his children took care of him afterwards when it came to taking care of him, dealing with challenging situations and people. And they took care, they put all the cheshbonos aside to take care of him, what he needs. It was a beautiful thing just to see. You call the house, you hear, listen to Miriam answer the phone. Wow. She just very simple, taking care of him. It was a replication of what Bobby and Zaidi, we learned from them. It was given back over. I'll just end with one idea. Rav Lopiansky spoke by the end of the Shiva of Rav Nosson Tzvi Zatzal, and he mentioned an idea that the Torah is nimshal to Ruchnius is nimshal to Mayim. So water, the teva of water is that it goes, it flows and flows and flows. And if there's, let's say in a plumbing system, if there's one little hole, the second it can have a way to escape, it'll go away. That's the teva of water. That's the teva of Ruchnius. That was Zaidi. Zaidi always was, whenever there is an opportunity to help, to make other people grow, to build, that's who he was. When you set up a plumbing system, they have a thicker pipe that goes. It's a thick pipe, and then it goes into something in Hebrew they call it a michalek mayim, the water valves. There's a kavrashi. There's a main pipe. Zaidi was the main pipe. The more that we could take ourselves out of the way and like Rav Leff mentioned, being a malach, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu was able to be in the picture. Zaidi was the kavrashi of Florida. Zaidi was the kavrashi of our family. Everyone, like the rabbanim that sprout out from him, the family that sprout out from him, is in his chus of his Mesiras Nefesh, which none of us felt ever there was Mesiras Nefesh. We only felt the Ahava. There's Dasi told me that she was just speaking to him the day before on Tuesday. And he was so excited to make a siyum on Tisha B'Av. Every year he would make a siyum, and he said it was against the samals siyum mesechas ein lasos. There was this thing to during the time of Korban is to make a binyan, and he always used to say that we should have a milchak shluas and a fleishik Tisha B'Av. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us that all of the hashpah that he gave us and the love that he gave us. It was so warm. I remember when I went a long time ago when Esty was a baby. He used to go, she would tell her, he would put her hand and he wanted her to pull on his soft beard. I remember I give him, every time you see him, he'd give him a big hug and a kiss and a soft beard. My other grandfather is also full of love, but he had always a 5 o'clock shadow and I would just have to see if I got cut from it. But he never shaved, so he was always very soft. But we always felt that overwhelming love. He always cared about everybody, asked about everybody, had a good word to say, cared about what we were learning. It could be that when he was a kid, he said that Rabbi Yaakov used to see him on the street and ask him, "What are you learning?" And he was 17 years old, and he would speak to him about what he was learning. The things that he got, he passed over. He was the main pipe. He got it, he passed it over. He got a lot of love. He was named after his great grandfather. He was born supposedly on his third yahrzeit, and the words of his kever were in front of his eyes, tamid. He knew about that. He lived it. He had the same life occurrences, And he got what he took and he passed it over. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us, b'siyata d'shmaya, to all of us in different ways that we're able to emulate him. Even if it's not consciously, that's in fact that we gained and grew from him, that we should continue until Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu B'Karov Amen. Rabbi Yossi Weberman.
Try not to repeat. Thank everyone for coming to cover Achron Mazedi. So first, a special thank you to my brother Shimi for arranging this Levaya. He did for Bobby, he did for Zaidi. It's close for him and his family. One of the last times I saw Zaidi, he said to me, Yossi, du bist mein Kind. I don't only feel like I lost a grandfather. I don't only feel like I lost a father. I also lost a Rabbi. Yeah, I gained so much from you in Torah. It's good to speak to you and learning all the time. You were born, like Shimi said, in the third yard side of Pinchos and Bruder. It was interesting. You always used to marvel eerily, like you look like him, and your handwriting was come out the same as well. And took all the Yesodis that you learned from Zaidi Ben Zion and from Zaidi Moshe and all the Yesodis that were imbued inside you. You went and took those, and you built a beautiful mishpacha. From the time you were a little kid, your kishun was recognizable. Zaidi was an Eloi, he was a genius. But he used it to help other people, he used it for Torah. He learned mamish basmada rabbah. And he learned basmada rabbah, he developed into a Talmud Chacham and mamish nushas and poiskim. Like Rabbi Janowski met others, you could talk to him anywhere. And I would sit there, I'm telling you, I would prepare kashas, shver kashas, and we would go at it. And he mamish loved it. And almost always he had some sort, if not, he would think about it a little bit, and he had a pshat, he'd go back, but it was always, Torah was mamish flowed from his bones. When he was learning by the Malachim, Reb Chaim Flores said, by him, a sachkaler, he was the role model of what we want to be. He was the role model of what a Ben Torah should be. When he married Bobby, Shalom, they shared the same vision in building a Torah Dika house. It lived on Emun and B'tachon. They didn't live on money, they lived on Emun and B'tachon. He was never moved by money. He tried to do it the best that he could do for the Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whether it came to the mikvah, to the Eruv, you could threaten his life, as my brother said, but it didn't make a difference. And march on, he did. He would go on, and it didn't make a difference. He would do what was right. When I was much younger, I always used to try to figure, see what his essence was, and what he's nispal by, and what, there's certain things of COVID. I was wondering, does it really make a difference to him? But in the last few years, it was glaringly obvious what he was, who he was. I mean, my uncle Yisrael remembers when he was in the hospital and he was sleeping. He was saying, he started for the pasuk. He was giving a shir nechos nida. He was sleeping. He was talking and learning in his sleep. Right? He gave a shir in the State Gemara, and he was giving nafkaminas. And one of my aunts, when Bobby was in the terrace, she was sleeping in the room, and he was speaking in different Torah. I remember once I went to watch him in the Regents, in the rehab. I went to go spend time with him, and at one point he was sleeping, right? And he was mamish talking and learning in his sleep. The Mishnah, and it was a whole different level. It was mamish. It's not just Torah we learned. It was mamish in his bones. He woke up one time, and instead of saying, "Oh, Yossi, hello," he's like, "Shot is." I was like, I continued off. I remember once when I was a bacher, it was a nice that happened with me and made an indelible impression. It really changed me in many ways. We were walking past the field. We were walking home. And we were walking past a lot, an empty lot, and he said, Yossi, what do you see? So I said, there's a lot, they're going to build a house. I wasn't sure what to answer. He said, if it's on Shabbos, if it's a field, it's Melechus Chayrish, and if it's a house, it's Melechus Baini. And he said it, that was the way he looked at life. He had a different set of glasses. Right? He had an unbelievable way of crystallizing the Torah and taking the Torah in. And one time I was explaining it to other people. And he used to say things, a lot of times you think he was saying a simple vart, oh, it's a nice idea. So one time I was walking with him, I said, Zaidi, what are you going to say? I was so rather like Shalom said, on a Shabbos day drasha, he always prepared as he was walking up the stairs. He told me that also, but he said, we started thinking, he said, in Raya Mehemna it says this, and in Lukuti Torah it says this, and in Tanya it says this, and I'm thinking, there's no one in the world in Shalashudis is going to understand this. He got up, he said it was so beautiful. It was just simple divrei Torah. He just spoke it, and after having heard what he said, I was able to hear how everything he had him a car and a tzugshtel. It was just mavel al Ryan. His love for mitzvahs. He had his love for his sreigim. I remember one time he got an esrog. I was talking with him. He was like feeling it. He was touching it. I really love the way it's shaped and it looks. I would go look for a sreigim with him and love him. Sukkahs, the sukkah. How he loved the sukkah. He had such a love for mitzvahs, and he tried to give that over. He didn't only have a love for mitzvahs, he had a love for family as well. I mean, he had a special love for family. He loved family. Whenever people come to visit him, even extended relatives, no matter how far distant related you are, and he knew the whole genealogy they'd be able to figure out. One time when we were driving, I remember when I was a little kid, we were driving from New York to Miami, and every place we stopped off, came out of the place, had a minion and a relative. And that's how it was. And he enjoyed, and he used to come to every simcha, and it didn't make a difference if he got a kibbutz or not. I remember my chassan told me, Yossi, I don't need a kibbutz. And one time he came to one bris and he didn't get a kibbutz for whatever reason, but he came and he was just there to just be mishtatef, just because he loved it. He also had a very unique Avos Yisrael. He was able to tune into every yid and speak to them and be able to connect to them and know what they needed in order to be able to inspire them. I remember one time he told me that he was coming back from Ansara, and the bus he was coming back from Kiryat Yom, and he was standing by the bus stop, and there was a yid, who was a fry yid, standing with an ice cream cone, and the bus comes, just barely gets, gashes your knees as it's going up there, and so this guy's holding a backpack. He gets in there, he gets on the bus first, yid, and he takes the backpack off, and he's holding an ice cream cone. He says to my Zaydi, "Please hold the ice cream cone." So he says, "Yeah." He takes the backpack off, puts it on top, sits down. My Zaydi sits next to him, and he says, "Will you make a bracha on it?" He said, "I'm not dati. I'm not from." He said, "Do you do chesed?" He said, "Of course we do chesed. Betach, of course, that's our nature." He said, "Thomas, do you daven before you take a test?" So he thinks about it, and he says, "Yes." Zaydi said, "Anyone who says there's 100% dati is lying, and anyone who says there's 100% not dati is also lying." Everyone's in the middle. So you do chesed, you daven before you take a test. This guy does a little bit more. Everyone has their own derech. And he gave him that kohen and he made a bracha. I don't know what happened to that guy at the end, but I know one thing, right? That person felt that there was a yid who genuinely cared about him. And I guarantee you that's the only reason why he made a bracha. There's a special thank you. Of course, everyone who went, it's Meister Nefesh to visit Bobby and Zaidi, especially Zaidi in the last years, all the relatives, but just a very special thank you, first of all, to Ambassi, who used to make him the food that he likes every single day and try to work out that it was always delivered, and to Hodi, who was Meister Nefesh every day, and especially to Yossi, who wrote over the Divrei Torah, especially the last years. The Divrei Torah was very hard. It was harder for him to speak many times. Yossi sat there recording, writing the Divrei Torah, and he once commented. He said to my Aunt Hodi, he said, "I don't know who gains more, us going to visit Zaidi, or when Zaidi thinks that we came to, or us Zaidi visiting, by us going to visit Zaidi, or by Zaidi feeling appreciated, or by what we gain from visiting Zaidi." And also, of course, to Atara for Kamat being there every single day.
Just want to just end off with one short vart that he said, approaching Rosh Chodesh Menachemav. The word nechama is loosely translated as consolation. Marzedi pointed out from Rashi's in different places that the word nechama really means machshava acheres, meaning a different perspective, taking a step back, and let me see how the pictures of the puzzle, how the other pieces of the puzzle fit together, to see the more full picture. And he said that's why we say, Hamokim yenachim eschem b'soch shavei Yerushalayim. It's the Mekoim Shalom that's going to give you the nechama. Meaning the only time we're really going to see the full nechama is when the Beis Hamikdash is built and we're going to be able to see the full picture. And he said that's why we say in Kaddish, Yakosh Baruch Hu, you're great. Right? You're great in all the shiras, all those. That's great, all the praises. How are you greater than all the nechamas? What do you mean all the greater than all the consolations? It means that your perspective is so complete. You have the perspective beyond all the perspectives. You see how everything fits in. So now that you're up in Shemayim, you see the world with a more full perspective. And in Mirz Hashem, with the coming of Mashiach, we will also be there, be united. Miss you terribly. Thank you for all the kaichos you put it to us and to all the family. And to me especially, I really appreciate it. I don't know where I'd be. I'm my Rabbi. Ask Mechila for all the times I wasn't able to come or the things I could have done better. If I ever Chas v'Shalom offended you, even though I asked Mechila, maybe should help him. You should serve as a military Yosher. He's covered. Serve as a military Yosher for the Mishpach and Klal Yisrael, for the Fuars, Yeshuas, Ruchnis and Gashmias, Shadochem. You should all be zeichet to continue in your path of being Never Hashem and being Mekadosh Shem Shemayim. Now should swear with Tzarech
פרק ט"ז בתהילים. מילטון לדוד שומרי
I think so.
אתם הולכים לכיוון חלקת הקבר, לא להקליט את הלוויה. וברוס או יוסך לך וסחת סנופוב תחסת אליו תקרא מיתוי לא יסינו מתחת לא ילום חצי או במנתם ובזלה לא חשבים סיצורוי לא לבוא מדך לא יגול רק בינך אותם בסמות בסביבי יאשר לנח עדי סבנו מינךו לא יסונה אליך רוב ונגע לא יקרבו עליכו כי מלוכו ויצא ולוך לשמורכו בכל דבוכךו עד כפיים ישרון חום בפגוי באבן רגלךו עד נחל בפסם תדרוך כמו ישפה בשנין כאילו חזק והפתח ספרו כי יודע שמי קראיני ועיניהם הלכי בצורה אחת צורה חפדהו אוי רך ימים הסבר ואחרים מתרסקים הקביו בן מעלה לא ימר יסתכל מישהו של דברים מן התומרים זה אווירו דם דיין בוזו דנו תלך ולפני דיית ועושים ליסטים דיתה חשבוין אין בוזו כמו דנו תלך ליסטים ופורים בו בסיידו ולפני דיית ועושים ליסטים דיתה חשבוין לפני מלך ורצה לו חלק הקדוש ברוך הוא אסור תמיד פה לא יקבול דרכו משפט אין אמונו ואינו בצדיק ויעשרו ולא יצמר הרבה לגרזו ולכם וסופו יתנסות על חפני אדום ותאי פיש תברכו וחפרים העלו לו והגן כסרה נינוי צדו אליו לא טובוי אדוני נתנה נינוי לא טוב איש אדוני מברך הוא רק הולך אפילו בואי נראה שחיז ובולוש והפועל ולהעיר כל כמוסוי
נדע נזכר הישובה הרבו. לא מדוכים ישראל בים לקנות ישראל יעד שמחת לתחומי וקרב קיץ משיחי. חיי חיים למעט מחי לחובי ישראל. פגול ולזמן קודרים ריומיין. חיי שמי רבו ולחו למרום נורמיו. יסבורייך נשתבח נסבורי וישראל ויסנסי. ויסהדול ויסעלה ויסהלול שמי בקידשו בריחי. ראינו מן כל בחוסו ושרוסות ישבחוסו לכם וסלם בכל מובים ריומיין. יחי שלום ורב ונשמי וחיים אולי נבל כל יסנוע דים ויומיים אוי זה שורים אלוהים זה יעש שורים אולי נבל כל יסנוע דים ויומיים אמן
ברוס או יוסך לך ותחת כפון תחפש לראות סדרה מיתוי לא יצרו מתחת לא ילום כסלו כמו סבבה פגדה לא כסלו חיצורי כי פעם תשמעי לבובו ומינך הולך על העליון הייתי לך תמיד במה ששם שלי אני נח ביד יצאתי מנכו אוי שונה ילך ורוב ונגע לא יקרב והולך לא חלצה ולא חלצה ובכל יחסו עד כפיים יצרות ובכל יחסו אוי לכורים ילך לא יגוס רק וילך תביט לא יתנו ונגע לא יקרב והולך אם לא חולצה ולא לשמור ולשמור עד ככה נשמעים רבי תגוי בעצם המלכו אז ככה נופצם תדרוך תלמוד תציר בשנים אם יחתק מהפרטים הסגרים כידעתי תתרואיני בעיני מלכים את תורה אחת זהו ואחת זהו אוי רחמים אשר ברבי שעושי וישב בסייסר אליהם בתשע די סטרינון ואומר לה דינוי מחסים צורסי להם תחבוי כי הצלחוי בריגוש דברבויס ואברוסו יוסף לך וסחת נפוב תחסת לך לזרם מתוי ויסתרו מפחד לא מחצי ופעימו מדבר לא יפדה לך כתב בשביל צהריים איפה הם בצדחו אלף ובובו ממינךו אינך לא יגוש רק בעינך תביט בשביל מסך שם תראה כי אתה דיני מחסי אין יומדת ומינךו לא יסעו נהלך לו ונגע לא יקרבו עליך כי מלוך חולצה ולוך לשמור לך בכל דרוכך עד כפיים יסעון לך פן תגוי באבן רגלך עד שחר לא פסן תדרוך תדמוי ספי וזנים כי בחשק והפנתהו תגבירו כי יודע שמי יקרואיני בעיניהם ונוחי בצורה אחת זהו ואחבדהו אוי רחמים אסביר והרבי שעושי וישב בסייסר אליהם מצל שדי סטינון ואומר לה הנה מחסים צורו סילה את תחבוי כי הצלחוי פחי גשני ברבויס ואברוסו יוסך לך וסחת כנופוב תחסת נפשך מתוי ויסתרו מפחד לא ישמחין ציופים ומדבר בו ולהלוך כתוב בשעות צהריים איפה אין ניסיתך אלף ורבובו ממינך אינך לא יגוס רק בעינך תביט של מה לא ישתרו לעינך לא ונגע לא יקרבו עליך ולא חלצה ולא תשמור חפכו ומוכחו עד כמה הם ישמור חפכו ומוכחו עד ככה לא תתרואיני בעיני מלכים בתורה אחת זהו ואחת זהו אוי רחמים אסביר והרבי שעושי וישב בסייסר אליהם מתשע די סטרינון אמר לה הנה מארצים צוזר סילת תחבוי כי הצלחון כך יושב ברבויס ואברוסו יוסך לך וסחת כנופוב תחסת נפשך מתוי לא יסירום תחת לא ילו מחצי פיום ממדבר בו ולעד כתוב בשעות צהריים יפועל מצדך אלף ובובו ממינך אינך לא יגוס רק בעינך תביט בשם עשה שם תראה כתוב הנה מחסי אלי צמדו בעינך לא ישונה אליך רוב ונגע לא יקרבו עליך אם הלוך ויצא ולוך לשמור לך בכל דרכך עד כפיים יצאו לך בית נגע וידע נגדך שחל מופסת תדרוש אוי רחמי הזה ברביזותי הקביו בן נעלה לא ימי תקדו שלושה דברים אינה טובו לידי אגלו למה אין לא זולה נתו ילך ולפני התרוסית לפני בחשבון נעים לא זולה לאן נתו ילך לפני בפרשון מסדר ולפני מיד תרוסית לפני בחשבון לפני מלך מלכם לא פני הקדוש ברוך הוא והוא רחום וכפר ובו נראה השחיס ויבוא לו שדפרי ולא יאיר כל חמוסוי
Dem ist da der Schmeier, aber
אורי
auch nicht der Ich schmeier aber noch auf noch lang noch mal so am Stabak ist vor so man ist natürlich da oben ist Shalom schmeier schon wir dann kommen was soll schon sagen so sagen kann man sagen wir kommen mal in Goa ich schmeier aber noch schmeier kein mal in Goa so ist schon mal wieder schon mal in Goa so in Goa
אפשר לעשות גם כך לא חייבים yeah. הבן והנכדים יכולים לגשת גם. ורחו מחפרו בן אלי השחית ובולו שיפוי בלוי כל חמוסוי. ורחו מחפרו בן אלי השחית ובולו שיפוי בלוי כל חמוסוי. ורחו מחפרו בן אלי השחית ובולו שיפוי בלוי כל חמוסוי.
And then they moved to
איפה הבן? הבן שיבוא לפה בבקשה. זלמן. זלמן. בוא לפה בבקשה לראש. זלמן. בצד שני. פרק ט"ז בתהילים. נכתוב מדור שומרני וסיסימו. אמר ואדינו אדינו יודות אינו סיבה לא לכו. ירדוי שמה שבא עוצימו ואדירי כל חב ציפון. עיר בעצמו ישמח שמרו בעל הסיר פתקים ודום ועל הסיר שמי שמס חוסוי. אדינו אם נעשו כאילו חוי סיידות וברגו לי. חבולים נופלו לי בנים מן מהפתחה לסופרו אלוהי. עבורי זה עניין שיוסות אפלי לא יסיסו לי חידיו איסו. יסעינו נגדי תמיד ימינים על המועד. לא חזמח לי ויגיד כבר ידיע פסור יתקן הבטח. ישראל דו נפי לשאול יסתם חסית כל לרוי שוחס. לא ידיעני אוי רחיים סוהב אסמוך את זמנךו. ואימו יזימים חנצח. קדיש.
Rabbi Kedash Merabah.
Amen.
לילה מקבל חטא בשירתה תשפטה בנחמתה דמינה בימה ואמרו אמן. יש למה רבה בשמי וחיים טובים עלינו ועל ישראל ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום ובמה ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
הרב פינכס אהרון דרב בן ציון, בשם החבר קדישה, בשם המשפחה, הקרובים, הידידים והמלווים, אנו מבקשים ממך סליחה ומחילה, שם חס וחלילה פגענו בכבודך, הם בטהרה בנשיאת המיטה ובתיקון הקבר, אנא סלח לנו כי אין זו אלא שגגה. החבר קדישה נהגה איתך כמנהגי ירושלים עיר הקודש. יהיה לה מליץ יושר עבור משפחתך, קרוביך וידידיך, ועבור כל כלל ישראל בכל תפוצות ישראל. ויתן השם הובילה עמובס לנצח, ומור השם אלוקים דימו מעל כל פונים, ובוא לציין גואל במהרו בימינו אמן. לך בשלום וסדר בשלום וסמוי לגרולכו לקיץ הימים. כשנצא מחוץ לחלקה באזור הכביש, נעשה 2 שורות לניחום אבלים לבן, את הבת מנחמים בלי שורה. gotta go. I'm not going to be not going to